Hello everyone, and welcome to yet another addition to my Arcane journey. Welcome to the reaction for Season 2, Episode 7, the first episode of Act 3. It has been quite a while since my last recording. It's been a couple weeks. I've spent those weeks doing a lot of work for the 9-hour Final Fantasy VII Rebirth video on my main channel, just finishing that up. That's been a year-long project almost, so I had to finish that up. And then I've been editing every single recording prior to this, so I have all 6 episodes edited and ready to be uploaded on Patreon and YouTube. But I've been spending time on that rather than recording. So I've been away from the episodes for a little bit, and I can't wait to see how the series ends. I'm now ready to get into Act 3. It's been a bit of a struggle to stay away from spoilers for the last couple weeks, but I have, and we're good, and I'm glad to be able to take this home. I'm so excited for whatever this act has in store. I think it has a lot of stuff to do. It's honestly quite a challenging task to tie things up in a very satisfying way, given where the series is at with only 3 episodes left. But I have confidence, and I can't wait to see how they'll attempt to do this. Where all the characters will go. Jace, Victor, Jinx, after what happened with Isha and Vander, who I assume they're both dead? Vi and Caitlyn and the fallout of that and how they're going to tackle Ambessa going forward and Caitlyn's character, because they definitely have to do a bit more with, I think, the aftermath of what Caitlyn did and make that have a bit more payoff. Ekko and Heimerdinger are still missing. Have no idea what's going on with them. I assume we'll hear from them very soon. I think it would be strange if we didn't get something from them in this episode. But yeah, there's so much to do. Just a couple of things I want to quickly talk about because I've uploaded, as of this point, 3 episodes on YouTube and 4 on Patreon. I'm recording this very shortly after I uploaded the episode 3 reaction. And just a couple of things I want to address because I want to better communicate my stance on certain things or clarify a couple of things that people are saying, and gonna spend a couple minutes on that. Firstly, there is the sentiment I had in episode 3 about how the fight between Jinx and Vi really felt like it didn't have a huge amount of build-up. When it started, it's kind of like, oh, shit, we're already here? Okay, I guess this is the big fated battle. But it doesn't really feel like it's super earned as a build-up for that fight. And I mentioned how I felt like a little underwhelmed at first in that way, but then as the fight went on, I came to realize, and it clicked for me, that this doesn't really have much build-up because neither of the girls, of the women, of Vi or Jinx, are committed to actually killing each other. Neither of them really want to do this. Jinx has a death wish, Vi doesn't really know what she's doing, and she's in this tragic stagnancy, as I've described it. And I feel like they're fighting because they feel like they should, and they're fighting because they need an outlet in some way to display and express their rage and grief and sadness. But they don't really have genuine malice towards each other. They don't, not to the extent for which they want to kill each other. And I got pushback on that because people said, you know, Jinx was shooting a gun at Vi. Vi looked in her expression like she really wanted to kill Jinx, and they're not holding back in the actual fight. And yes, I agree with that, but that's because of what I said. That fight is an expression and an outlet for expression. They are so filled with negative emotions and rage and anger at each other. I'm not saying they're not angry at each other, for sure they are. I'm sure harbor some hatred for each other, but that doesn't mean that they want to kill each other. And so, of course, when they're in the midst of battle, they're both seasoned fighters at this point. They both know how to kill. They are going to, in the heat of battle, of course they're going to lose themselves in it, and of course Jinx is going to point her gun at Vi while they're in the act. Of course, Vi is going to, strike full-bloodedly at Jinx. Of course, they're in the midst of this emotional expression, and they're going to lose themselves in it. So, I don't think there's any contradiction between the idea of them not really wanting to kill each other, and them fighting with what seems like, an intent to kill in the heat of the moment. I don't think there's a contradiction there. But what I'm talking about is that, in reflection, prior to the fight, in the quiet moments when Vi thinks to herself, am I ready to kill Jinx? When Jinx thinks to herself, do I want to kill Vi? I don't think they can honestly answer yes. And I think that's proven by the moment after the fight, where Jinx just says, I'm glad it's you, I give up, do it. And she so clearly just exhales and just lets it happen, and there is no malice for Vi there. I think it's clear there that this fight was her last act in this moment, and she didn't really have intent of actually killing Vi in these quiet moments, the moments that really matter, where that really reflect your heart. Jinx wanted to die here, and she wanted Vi to do it, but she didn't want to kill Vi, even if in the heat of the moment she shot her gun at her. The true nature of these people's souls is shown in the quiet moments where they can properly think things through. Now, that doesn't mean that Jinx could have accidentally killed Vi despite her heart not really wanting to do so, because that's similar to what happened with Silco. But my point is that neither of these women actually thought, I want to kill my sister. And I think that's illustrated through Vi hesitating in the moment where she was going to kill her. I think the story builds up that she was not ready to lose her sister, and she was grappling with the idea that Jinx is her sister. She would constantly tell herself Powder's dead. That's not true, though. And so I think she sees in this moment when Jinx gives up and says, kill me, that she's not ready to do it. She doesn't want to do it. And so she hesitates, and then ultimately, after a few seconds of hesitating, just screams and gets her punch ready, and that's when Isha comes in. And someone says, yeah, she was going to kill her there. I don't buy that. Personally, I don't buy that at all. I think that from Vi was just like, I guess I should do this. I'm so angry and full of grief and frustration and self-hatred that I'm unleashing it on Jinx. Kind of similar to the end of episode 3 of Act 1, where she hit her. But I think at most, it was going to the force in that punch was going to knock Jinx out. I don't think it was going to kill. I don't think it was a punch to kill. And, you know, you're welcome to disagree with that, but to me, that is so clearly the intent of the show, and the interpretation of them genuinely wanting full-blooded during, before, and after the fight, yes, I want to kill my sister, is so against my perception of the characters and what the story is trying to convey, and the evidence that we see before the fight and after the fight and throughout Season 2. Like, that just doesn't work for me. The build-up to the fight doesn't work. It feels very half-hearted if they actually genuinely want to kill each other, and the fallout as well doesn't really quite sit right with me. It just makes much more sense to me that the two sisters harbor so many complex feelings towards each other, and in that fight just wanted to express them, expressed all of them. And it was a display of sadness for how far they had drifted from one another, but that doesn't mean that they wanted to actually kill one another. I don't buy it. I don't buy it, and I'm quite confident that the story isn't trying to tell us that either. So sorry for spending quite a bit of time on that, but I want to adequately explain myself, because in these casual videos, sometimes I might not communicate things as well as I could have if I scripted things out and really thought everything through before saying it. So hopefully that clears things up. Also, it was pointed out to me that Caitlyn hitting Vi in the scene where they kind of depart and diverge at the end of episode 3 is reminiscent of Vi hitting Powder before they diverge, just sort of illustrating the generational violence, the cycles of violence there, and that's really cool. And then last thing, I think this is my fault for not saying this in videos and only really saying this in comments, but lots of people, tons of people have been in Twitch streams, on Discord, on Twitter, in comments to the videos. Tons of people have been saying that I should watch the music video. I forget what it's called, but the music video for Season 2 that has to do with Ambessa. Lots of people have been like, you should watch this before the season started, while the season's going on. Tons of people have been telling me about it, not knowing if I'm aware of it. I'm very much aware of it. I have been for months. I just personally don't want to watch it until the season's done. I'm going to watch it after the season's done. I know it doesn't have any spoilers. I just personally don't want to see the video until after the season's done. It's just how I want to do things. So, yep, I know about the video. I'm going to watch it just after the season's done. With all that out of the way, sorry for the long preamble, but I think it was merited, considering the housekeeping stuff I had to do. Let's get into episode 7. I have high hopes for this act. I really hope this episode's great. I think it will be. But I wanted to do some specific things, and we'll see if it does. Again, if you want early access to the next episode, you can watch it on Patreon for $5 patrons, excuse me, and $10 gives you full-length reactions with a timer. Okay, let's get into it. Okay. Was that different? Holy shit. The Wild's Rune. Oh, I think I see. Holy shit.
You're beyond help. Whoa, relax, Jumpy. I've got a new idea. Did you just throw that?
Stay back!
Oi! What in the seven sumps is all this racket? Oi, one of those days, huh?
You know those ugly twins. Genius and madness.
Maybe take Oh. What's got
Oh
in
my
him?
god, what the hell? Oh. Whoa. Oh my god. Instant tears. Wow. Well, we've got Ekko, and it looks like the Wild's Rune has transported him into an alternate universe of sorts where all the horrible stuff didn't happen. So I wonder, it seems like Jace may have been transported to the opposite of this. Or I don't know. If it's the same mechanism, he must have been transported to an alternate universe where things are even worse somehow, and he sees the extremes of what this leads to. Either way, that was a gut punch. Oh my god. Seeing Benzo, and they so well established what Benzo means to Ekko minimalistically in the first season, but then seeing Powder / Jinx, it looks like. Oh man. The premise for this episode is amazing. Wow.
Hey, Space Boy. What is up with you? You've been out of it all day.
Feel like I woke up in the wrong universe.
I've got you.
Wow. The sort of trauma response to her touching him.
It sounds royalty. My liege.
Sit down.
Hey, little man. Trouble in
Little,
paradise?
oh my god. He's still calling him little
Just the
man.
usual Project woes.
Tell me about it. I mean, we finally got the hybrids to feed off the Fisher gases, but the conversion rate's way too low. They hardly grow. They're nowhere near robust enough. Water.
Oh man. Am I just weepy today? What the hell's going on? I think it's the episode. Wow.
Where would you be without her?
The most tragic thing about this is
Hey, Guard.
you see where the episode's heading.
Have another show coming up.
There's
Milo here is a big fan. Like,
this is special.
What would they do without you?
there would probably be some arm flailing.
But where's Vi?
As good as it feels to pour everyone's drink, you need to fill your own cup every now and again.
You think I'm holding myself back?
You're too smart to spend your life in a bar.
Professor, we're gathering of minds.
Oh.
So is that is that ours or not? I can't tell.
It seems the anomaly
Oh, okay.
which dislodged
Okay,
us
okay.
from our proverbial reality also scattered us across time.
So it is. So these two are together. Okay.
How long have you been here?
1,128 days, 6 hours, and 20 minutes, give or take.
So you've just been waiting for me all this time?
Precisely. Or rather, imprecisely.
Imagine that. 3.5, 4 years.
Is he here?
I fear he may have wound up elsewhere.
Please tell me you figured out a way to get us home.
Okay.
I'm afraid Hex Tech was never invented here, and without a creation so prodigious as the Hex Gates...
No anomaly.
Hex
it
Tech isn't
all
here, and this is what
bad.
happens.
I've been able to accomplish wonderful things in this world. This place will grow on you, you'll see.
I have people back home who need me. We don't belong here.
And yet, we can't leave.
Wow.
I'm gonna find
That's-
a way
that's
back
profound,
with or
man.
without you.
I was gonna go see Vi.
Okay.
Vi?
You wanna come?
Oh.
What have we done?
Oh. Her tone of voice. I think seeing Vi means seeing a gravestone. And then Jace. So this is where he went. This episode is insane. Also, where the hell is Jace?
Who's there?
Did you bring me here?
Where are we?
Episode 2?
Wait!
Wow.
No. It can't be.
What's with the
Wow.
third degree? You came to me for help.
Seeing powder like this.
Sorry, sis. Someone's wigging out over his project and having an identity crisis again. No names.
Not a gravestone, but a
I
shrine.
got the not living up to my potential speech from Vander again.
And she talks to Vi.
Reminds me of you.
She's dead?
I never want this episode to end.
You gave us the tip. We went on that job because of you.
The job. That's why there's no hex.
Jace's apartment?
You should leave.
Jace's apartment.
Go. Before I do something.
So something went wrong there.
Believe me, I'm working on it.
Something went wrong with the initial heist to Jace's apartment in the beginning. Vi died. But the events never happened in the way they happened, so Hextech was never invented. Total inverse. Oh my gosh. Look at the details. The environmental details. You know, this reminds me of a Supernatural episode. I don't think that many will be able to That guy's in episode 1. These are all familiar faces.
Go spin the wheel and see where it lands. Join in the circus, stay for a dance. And right when the war quiets
Is that Heimerdinger?
down, and do what you can. Wait till your brothers and your sisters.
What am I watching? This is a special piece of media, this episode specifically.
It just began. Chart, my friends. Go and make some mistakes. You live and you learn. And where the chips fall, it's not your concern. Like the wind, gonna breeze, fires will burn. Let 'em turn. Thank you very much.
This is something else, man. Let the gears turn. Keep pushing on. But it makes me feel that Heimerdinger might have a different path than him. Holy shit.
You think you can recreate the anomaly with these?
That's the theory.
Tampering with the Arcane never ends well, lad. The risk is far too great.
You said I was your pupil. I need a professor. Better yet, a partner.
Oh, blast nozzles. How could I forsake a brilliant lad in need?
Again. Victor, Jace, both of them, he's doing things right this time. He's realized what he's done wrong in the past and the people he's forsaken. And he's not making that mistake now. Wow. Also, these beings. These are the beings that Jace saw in the people that were touched by Victor in episode 6. He saw them in the like he got flashes of these things. So is that just the extreme of what happens when people are touched by the Arcane or Hextech or Wild Rune? Oh, fucking hell, man. Sorry for swearing. That hooded figure with the staff reminds me of what we saw in episode 2 when Jace was a kid, and we see it flying, we see him flying in and out of time. Disappearing, reappearing. There is some time dilation going on here, which makes me think, who is another hooded figure with a staff?
That research is everything, my whole life.
He was my mentor, and I betrayed him. Rats. Consumers.
I was trying to create magic.
It's your time now, Jace. Perhaps it's time.
No, please.
I love that we're seeing... Wow. Wow. I love that we saw the end product of who he became when he went against exactly what his ideals were in the first place, but now we're seeing the process that got him there. Reflecting on his entire life, what his ideals led to, if not tempered with humanity. And this is the slow unwinding of that. Wow. Once upon a time, he envisioned a world without Hextech or magic, and he tried to end it all. Here, he is fighting blood, sweat, and tears, life and limb, to create a world without that magic.
Watch your step. We're almost there.
Ekko, I don't know what this is all about. You painted this?
I had this dream where things went another way.
She looks so badass.
You don't know the half of it. She was the toughest person in all of Zon. Nothing scared her.
No, not my sister. But I was strong because she was afraid. Well, her fear of losing us is what made her fight so hard.
You were different in my dream too. Your ideas changed the world. I can't shake the feeling that that's who you're supposed to be.
I like my life. I don't want to lose what makes me chasing some wild dream.
I think he's saying...
Sometimes taking a leap forward means leaving a few things behind.
All right, out with it. What do you want from me?
I think he's finally properly confronting the fact that Jinx and Powder are the same person. He's had to try to lie to himself to say that they're not, just like Vi. But I think he's realizing that. This is an exceptional episode. In every way. Oh, what beautiful souls here, man. Doing what they can to ensure that life thrives in another shard, in another world. Even if they themselves are okay, they want to push for something beyond that. I've been crying this whole episode.
So small. Golly, we've done it.
So, what does it do? So, what does it do?
You just asked me that.
No, I didn't.
I'm too tired
Oh!
for games. It's a time loop. Huh?
Don't his powers have to do with... What do his powers have to do with time?
Time loop.
You're going back in time.
Zooks, how did you stumble upon that?
I was playing with inversions on Jace's acceleration room.
How far did you go?
I don't know, a second?
Try going back further.
Take it slow, lad. We wouldn't want to push a new invention too far too quickly.
Heimerdinger here is, I think, the perfect balance.
2, 3, 4. The limit is 4 seconds.
Are you certain, my boy? What were the indicators?
Trust me.
Yeah.
It's 4 seconds.
You can start by attending your party. And what's the point of a device like this if you don't enjoy the time you have?
The imagery in this, the surrealist, absurdist, apocalyptic, dark imagery in Jace's world here. How the hell am I gonna cut this episode?
There he is. Where's the little lady?
Not sure. She said something about making an entrance.
Ah, she does love a spectacle, eh?
That she does.
Hey, in case I don't remember to tell you tomorrow, you've always meant the world to me, Benzo.
Oh. Well, you, don't get all mushy on me now. Hey. Making a big man misty, are you? Ah, these damned allergies! Dad has been raving about your Z-Drive.
Z-Drive?
I have the feeling that you'll be running this place soon.
So, there's a chance for us yet.
You.
Didn't think I'd miss your big day, did you?
Didn't you try to kill him?
Greatest thing we can do in life is find the power to forgive.
T'es la meilleure chose qui m'est arrivée, mais aussi la pire chose qui m'est arrivée. Ce jour où je t'ai rencontré.
Look at the parallel with episode 4 from season 1. The footsteps.
Tu sais ce qu'on dit. Sois près de tes amis les plus chers. Mais ma meilleure ennemie, c'est toi. Fuis-moi. Le pire, c'est toi et moi.
Wow.
Some night.
It's beautiful.
Where'd you learn those moves?
Just like episode 1.
I was just following your lead. I just want to thank you. You know, for everything. I used to dream the Undercity could be like this.
And he's giving it up.
But somewhere, I got consumed by all the ways it wasn't. I gave up on it. Gave up on you.
I've never seen you give up on anything, Ekko.
You ever wish you could just stay in one moment?
Sometimes taking a leap forward means leaving a few things behind.
Sorry,
It's fine.
Can we just pretend like it's the first time?
Le pire, c'est toi et moi.
Ekko, my lad! You're just in time!
This is where it all started, isn't it? Because of Hextech.
Why did you ever give me this? Why? It doesn't have to go this way, right? Just tell me there's a chance.
I won't fail. That's what he said, right?
Oh, I do wish I could apologize to Miss Powder for co-opting her space like this.
Send me back.
I must say, since I've met you, lad, I've truly lived.
What?
Back in a wink.
No! Everything! Wait!
I won't fail. I swear it.
Dear friend across the river. Wow. That goddamn leitmotif.
Powder? What happened?
Oh, man. There are lots of fluids pouring from my face right now. I need to collect myself, man. I need to collect myself. I think that's my favorite. I think that's my favorite Arcane episode. I think that's my favorite Arcane episode. I mean, hopefully my reaction tells a tale of its own. But, man, in the past couple of years, I've had some of the most special media experiences I've had in my life. I finished Final Fantasy XIV. That's now one of my favorite stories of all time. My favorite video game. I played Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. and loved it so much I made a 9-hour video on it. Transcendent experience. I played through the entire Yakuza series, and it's become one of my favorite stories of all time, several of my favorite games. I've read One Piece for the first time, Naruto for the first time. I'm currently going through Bleach for the first time. Some of the most special Hunter x Hunter chapters have come out in the past couple years. I have my original reaction series with Arcane. I have played Metal Gear Solid for the first time in the past two couple of years. So I'm not saying it lightly when I say that this episode specifically, is right up there with the best pieces of media I've ever experienced. This episode, I feel like I was crying the whole time. I don't know how I'm going to cut it out. If you ever want to, if you've ever been tempted to do full length, I'd recommend it for this episode above all else, because I think cutting any of it, cutting 30 seconds out of it, let alone half to 2/3 of the episode like I have to do, is doing it a disservice. This is one of the best episodes of anything I've ever seen, and I think, obviously, maybe there's confirmation bias, there's recency bias because I just finished it, but I think it's my favorite episode of Arcane. Episode 9, Season 1, Episode 9 comes very close. Season 1, Episode 7 comes very close. The last couple episodes, Episode 5, Episode 6 from Season 2, amazing episodes. Season 1, Episode 3, but just for the way this spoke to me. Every element of the presentation, every song was perfect. The tone was perfect. This bittersweet melancholy, this sort of nostalgia, this happiness, but also this sorrow, the light and hope juxtaposed by the horror and cataclysm, how every scene was dense with something, whether it be emotion or extremely beautiful audiovisual details, or theory bait on Jace's end, or emotions and admiration for Ekko and Jace, who, to me, I think this series is now shaping up for us to have 3 heroes, maybe 4 heroes, but no one for which their intent was bad. I think I'm just rambling. I ignore everything I just said. I think we're shaping up for Jace and Ekko to change this world and save this world. And if I had to guess, to an extent, probably Jinx as well. I'm not sure where Caitlyn and Vi will fit into it. But those 3 in particular, Jace, Ekko, Jinx, I think they're going to turn the tide. I think if something is there to be saved, they're going to save it from different angles. But just talking about the episode itself, everything about it, I don't have a single complaint. I don't think there is anything within it that wasn't pretty much perfect. The way it just dwelt just a little bit on seeing Vander happy and seeing Milo and, oh my god, Milo and Clagger, they're near the bottom of the list when it comes to my favorite Arcane characters, because they just, not because I don't like them, I like them a lot, but just because they're not in it as much, but I still care for them deeply. I thought their tragic deaths in Episode 3 were just so gutting and heartbreaking, and seeing them happy here. I don't know, am I just really weepy today, or is it the episode? Maybe both. A small detail I wanted to touch on is that I really, really love just the hints of Powder and Milo's relationship in this episode, because throughout the first 3 episodes of Season 1, I think one of the most kind of subtle, but not really subtle, but minor insinuations is that Milo and Powder really have a pretty rocky relationship, in that I think Milo has some hints of envy and jealousy, more than hints, and wanting to be acknowledged by Vi, but Powder having some sort of favoritism in his eyes. And he constantly derides Powder and criticizes her, and he's quite nasty to her. And what I really like about this is, from the little bit we see, it seems like they have a really, really sweet relationship. It seems like they're really close, like they're really good friends. It seems like Milo is a flirt, to put it lightly, and that Powder helps him out with women, with girls. And is there for him and gives him advice. There's some lines that insinuate that she does this quite often for him. And just overall, I think it was great to see them being friends. Just, there's something beautiful about that. They moved past their problems with one another. Milo matured, at least to an extent. Maybe he was there for her during the time in which she was grieving Vi, and he realized, really, that she was just a blameless little girl, and he had no reason to be jealous of her or mean to her, and they just reciprocated affection, and I just think it's really nice to see them as friends. And in addition, this episode really made me think back to the sequence in episode 6, the Remember Me sequence, deep inside Warwick the Beast, but really Vander's mind, where we see all of the happy times that he was fighting for. Vi and Powder as kids, Felicia and Connell and Silco, and just all the warm emotions he felt and the regrets he held deep in his heart. And just seeing this episode really helps, I don't know, properly contextualize the world that he was fighting for, the vision he tried to fight for. This is what Vander would have wanted. This is what everyone would have wanted, what Silco would have wanted. And it's just equal parts beautiful and tragic that it does happen in a shard, in a universe out there somewhere. But no matter what, in our universe, it just never seemed fated to happen. But seeing Vander, those two, and Benzo. Again, Benzo isn't a character I think about a lot when it comes to Arcane. Very important character for a lot of reasons, but not really fleshed out a ton. He doesn't have a lot of screen time, but the one thing that I think really got across in Season 1, well, there was his, I guess, role as part of the Old Guard and his relationship with Vander. But the thing that struck me most about Benzo was how clear it was that Ekko loved him and thought of him as a sort of foster father. And it was done, again, very minimalistically. It wasn't given a lot of screen time because there was a lot of ground to cover. But the moments where Ekko sees Benzo and hugs him, it's really good. And the music, man. The music used in this episode, so much hope in all that. It all sounds great, of course. They're great music, great songs to listen to, but the emotionality and the tonality of them. Heimerdinger's song, I couldn't believe that he was singing that. The music was just phenomenal, and specifically the lyrics of Heimerdinger's song. There's an element of just keep marching on, live your life, don't worry about making mistakes, and let the chips fall where they may. Now, there's two elements I get from the lyrics of this song. One of them is there is an element of let things happen naturally. Let the chips fall where they may. Just keep going forward. Don't sweat the small stuff. Just take it a little bit easy in that sense. And that's very Heimerdinger in this world, right? He transported here. He lived years here. I haven't done the math, but it's something like a little bit more than 3 years, I think. And he seems to be all the better for it. He seems to have gotten some clarity. He seems to really enjoy this world. That seems to be bereft of some of the mistakes he's made. Some of the mistakes a lot of people have made. It, in a lot of ways, is a good end, though not entirely. I'll get to that in a bit. But, yeah, it definitely seems to dwell on that element of it. You know, let things happen naturally, let things go about their natural course, and he seems to say that in his meeting with Ekko upon first seeing him, which is the sentiment being, yeah, we can't do anything about it. We're in this world. Yeah, it would be great to help our other worlds, but we're in this one, and you can't change that, so why try to fight it? Just make a life for yourself here. So there's an element of that to the lyrics, but what I take away more from it is there's an undercurrent in the lyrics of keep marching forward, set time back, start again, and then if you care about your brothers and sisters, your family, fight for them. Something along those lines. March on, my friends, is what it says, as we see Jace and Ekko. I don't think that's coincidental. I think these are the two people who will be significant in turning the tides here, and I think Jace has already started to do that in episode 6. So I think the other side of it, that maybe Heimerdinger isn't even aware of, but I think is very intentional because it sort of fulfills his character arc at the end, is that keep fighting, keep pushing on. If there is something wrong, if there is something that needs to be done, you can push yourself forward. You can take a step forward, take a leap forward, go for that revolution, kind of like Isha does, pushes herself forward, kind of like our characters do, like I talked about at the end of episode 6's discussion. So I think Heimerdinger essentially reaches his final form, and how appropriate in this episode when we lose him. I think now's a good time to actually dive into Heimerdinger, but just before I do, sorry, this is going to be all over the place. This is going to be a stream of consciousness review, because there's so much to cover and I don't really know how else to do it. I don't want to write notes. I don't want to structure it for myself. I just kind of want to speak from the heart, because that's what this episode did. So just quickly touching on it, beautiful to see Milo, Clagger, Vander, Benzo, and Ekko, and obviously I'll dive into the characters specifically in a bit, but just seeing Powder / Jinx happy, having obviously grieved immensely for Vi, but being able to see light in this world, and again, in addition to the Heimerdinger song, the French song that played during the dance, absolutely stunning, unbelievable sequence. The way that Ekko and Powder here paralleled the shot at the beginning, or during episode 1, of Vi and Powder looking out across Zon, across Piltover. We even saw Marcus, right? We see just random people in the streets throughout this episode that we see in episode 1. I remember distinctly one of them, there's multiple, I think there's multiple. We see enforcers and people from Zon interacting harmoniously. We see that great scene where Ekko sees the divide between the two cities and crosses the bridge, and he flashes back horrifically to his reality. The fight with him and Jinx, where he almost beat her to death, where he fought her and so tragically beat her to unconsciousness, almost. And how indicative is the divide between people within Zon and between Zon and Piltover than that shot right there. All the tragedy, what it's led to, the divide, and the rippling effects. But in this universe, everyone lives harmoniously. There are people throughout the bridge, across the bridge, enforcers in the Undercity, people in the Undercity, in Piltover. We see someone who, in episode 1, I distinctly remember, tried to scam Huck in episode 1, I believe, that Vander then sort of schooled. We see him just talking happily with someone in the street. We see enforcers that I know I've seen throughout season 1, maybe through season 2 as well. Beautiful little touches there to show this is almost idyllic. This, in a way, I mentioned this during the reaction, but in a way this reminds me a lot of an episode of Supernatural. I don't know how many of you guys have watched the CW show Supernatural. I'm a big fan of the first 5 seasons, but it reminds me specifically of an episode called What Is and What Never Should Be, is what the episode is called. And I won't get into spoilers or deep into that because that's not really relevant here, but wow, the tone of this completely captured the tone of that episode. This seemingly idyllic world where everything is harmonious and beautiful, and someone kind of is transplanted into it, but it's not their home, it's not their world. And so as beautiful as it is, as how many positives there are, the person, Ekko in this case, and to a lesser extent Heimerdinger, feels a need and a responsibility to go back to their world and have the strength of will to not lose themselves in it. Because Ekko, I mean, he's shocked, obviously, immediately upon going here, but the more he is here, the more beautiful he realizes it is. He can talk with Benzo and Milo and Clagger, and he has this beautiful relationship with Powder, who, again, their relationship, wow, I knew people shipped them just by the way that people talked in Season 1 about them, but I don't think Season 1 really gave us much of an indication of that. Now, I can recontextualize the fight between the two of them at the end of episode 7 of season 1. It's so much richer. Like, I thought it was genius for a lot of the presentation, what it meant for Ekko and how he views Jinx, but now there's a lot more richness and emotion associated, I think, with their relationship, knowing that maybe they were the seeds of that planted all the way back in their childhood. Ekko's felt that way about her, maybe Powder felt that way about him, but it never had the chance to blossom. This really delves into that beautifully, and holy shit, I love those two together, and how beautifully tragic it was that he had to give that up. But he was always going to, because he is a hero. But the thing is, it's not idyllic, it's not perfect. There is some lesser indications of that as Powder seems unwilling to take that extra step to become all that she can be. Vander reminds her of that, Ekko reminds her of that, and I think the hint is that she is kind of inspired to take that extra step, but nonetheless, she is a bit stagnant. Stagnancy being a big theme of Arcane. But more, I think the most important thing is that Vi dies. In this universe, everything is special, everything is better, immensely. But Vi dies in that initial mission, and for Vi to die, in exchange for everything about the world to be better, it seems like, Vi dies. So nothing is ever perfect, nothing is ever idyllic, and in this universe, nothing is exactly how it seems. But at the same time, I don't want to say that this world was poisoned or anything, that things were super wrong. They weren't. There's always a sacrifice, nothing's ever perfect. No world is ever perfect. This is pretty damn close, but it wasn't. Because even considering Vi and her importance and her death and how that's affected people, it's not like Powder is not able to live her life due to grief. She's moved on, and she very healthily, it seems to me at least, has this shrine and dedication to her sister, and she talked to her regularly, and to me this seems like a very healthy thing, which is really interesting because you would look at Powder and how she was as a kid. By the way, beautiful touch, horrifying touch, but beautiful, because she reacts in pretty much the same way she did in episode 3 when Vi abandoned her, quote-unquote, to go save Vander, when she freaks out in that really horrifying minute-long scene or so, where she decides that she's going to go and save them with the gems. She has almost an identical reaction to Vi dying. Just neat little touch there. But you would imagine that Powder, given what we know about her and given her disproportionate attachment, almost in some ways very unhealthy attachment to people in her life, and how that's led to such psychological fracturing, you'd imagine that she wouldn't be able to properly deal with Vi dying. But I guess she had the support system. She had Vander, Milo, Clagger, Ekko, everyone around her to help her through that loss, and now she clearly thinks of her sister with love and positivity and who she was. And I love the way that Vi is characterized in this episode, despite not being in it, because she says, Ekko describes her as brave and badass and fearless, and in some ways she is, but she's not fearless. It's true. Powder, Jinx, I don't know what to call her, but, it's the same person. Powder says that, no, she was always afraid. And she was. Vi was so full of fear. And she was so courageous, not because of the absence of fear, but because of the presence of it. She acted in spite of it. She was directionless. Vander never really taught her. Again, Vander's a great character and has a good heart, but he never really properly guided her for how to interact with this world and how to be a leader with a vision and a methodology. So Vi was really up shit's creek with no capability of acting out what her desires in a way that were productive or would bring about positive results. And so she was directionless, and so she was always scared, but she acted in spite of that as best she could. In this universe, there was a tragic accident and it got her killed. In our universe, it just leads to this stagnancy, these cycles, and I hope she breaks out of it. And it just strikes me that, we're talking about how this world isn't perfect. There's still sacrifices that are made and stuff like that, in that Vi didn't exist within it. She died. But I can't help but think that if Vi was given the choice, she would take the one where she died, if it meant everything else happened. And that is a huge part of the beauty of her character. I hope she has at least something close to a happy ending. And in addition to the little touches throughout the episode, I honestly want to rewatch it immediately, because I'm sure I missed some. Feel free to, if I've not mentioned any, mention them in the comments. I might inject some more audio in case I realize upon rewatch that there's some things I've neglected to talk about that I wanted to. But the last thing is just this gutting little detail. Silco at the end. Silco and Vander, they not only do... It's not like episode 5 where we see a flashback of what they used to be as brothers, as friends and whatever, but this offers us even more hope because the fight occurred. The fight that caused them to go in such different directions and for Silco to literally kill Vander, well, in a sense. But that fight occurred, And I guess in this universe, Silco read the letter, right? Because they got back together and forgave each other, and they made up, and they rekindled that. So I talked about in episode 6, I believe, or maybe episode 5. I think it's episode 5 where we read the letter from Vander to Silco, and it dwells on the idea of how many little coincidences. It's crazy. I talked about this in episode 5, and it comes to fruition in episode 7. How many little coincidences happen for history to happen the way it did. All these little tragedies that were the result of misfortune. How the story started, I literally talked about this. It's kind of blowing my mind how I said this, and it led to an episode where everything happened in a different way. But yeah, so many little coincidences that led to the story starting the way it did, and in particular, just the little things. What if Vi died in that explosion, and Milo and Claggor and Vander didn't? What if Vi, in another AU, what if Vi hadn't hit Jinx and didn't let Silco take her? What if Silco hadn't died? What if, and most pertinently here, what if that letter was read by Silco? Everything could have been different. We see it right here. And just the fact that there are, I guess we are confirmed that there's a multiverse, that there are alternate universes, millions of shards. Reminds me a little bit of Final Fantasy XIV. This episode really was just so sentimental and nostalgic and beautiful and reminiscent of a lot of my favorite stories. That Supernatural episode's one, Final Fantasy XIV's another. But yeah, I guess there are alternate universes in Arcane. Confirmed through this, and the fact that there are some in which all these characters are happy, it doesn't make me feel happier about the tragedy that happened, but there is a little bit of a light there. And all these characters had the capability of being happy, and in somewhere out there, they are. So that's beautiful. Also, just talking about the last bits and bobs of the episode as a full package, I talked about the music, the visuals, the characters we see through the streets, all the characters we see in this alternate universe that are different in a lot of ways, but also similar. I'll talk about the characters individually in a sec, but also just the presentation and devastation and contrast between our beautiful universe and Jace's. Complete opposites. My guy drew the short end of the stick because he is in this hellscape where it seems to me like it's the natural end of Hextech taken to its unsavory extreme. It's the bad end. It's the worst end, and he sees it with his own two eyes, similar to what Heimerdinger saw and what he warned them about. And, I'm going to talk about that hooded figure and all that later, but needless to say, the people, I think the way that the people, the creatures he sees here, who seem to be decaying and overridden by this dark magic, it's kind of biological too. I don't know the circumstances of it or the logistics or the physiology really, but it seems like the way he flashed in episode 6 saw the people in the congregation, Victor's people, like Huck and all the people in the in that area, and he flashed to the beings he saw in this episode. I think those beings he saw in this episode are the natural end product of the people we saw that Victor healed. I think that over time, as it festers, kind of like Shimmer, this would transform these people into monsters, husks, whatever you would call them. Either that, or there was just some sort of cataclysmic explosion that has led to these decayed or destroyed corpses. Or maybe both. But the visuals just so beautifully nailed home. It was beautiful, but it's dark beauty. It is catastrophic, apocalyptic beauty, surrealist imagery. Just some of the visuals were some of the best in the whole series. Some of the most striking images I've seen in a long, long time. As Jace trudges his way through this muck, and Ekko, in a much better universe, but going through similar emotional turmoil, does the same. These two parallel heroes. Though I do want to say, maybe calling Jace a hero is overstating it a little bit, because Ekko is much more morally sound in my opinion than Jace. I just want to get that out of there. I think Jace has done many things wrong and does so this season. So I don't think they're built the same. I think Jace is doing something heroic. Maybe calling him a hero isn't right. Maybe it's not accurate, but I think he is doing heroic acts for this world. Whereas Ekko, I think, is the most bona fide hero. Anyways, all that aside, let's dive into the characters individually. I think the main ones I want to talk about are Ekko, Jinx, Jace, kinda Victor, and Heimerdinger. And I talked about Heimerdinger a little bit already. Let's just get into that. Wow. What an amazing, I guess you'd call him a secondary character, but what an exclamation point, what an impact for him to leave on. In this episode, we have a Heimerdinger who has learned from his mistakes, but needs that extra push. I think he's realized and been self-aware through his time with Ekko. He says this as much. He says that he properly lives. He started properly living when he met Ekko. What a beautiful, minimalistic, but beautiful relationship these two have, as Ekko really changed his life and vice versa. And so I think he learned through Ekko. Heimerdinger is someone who I think is defined by his obliviousness, his stagnancy, the way he let societal hierarchies that are so detrimental to the lower class. He let the chasms between these hierarchies, the classes of these hierarchies, just widen and widen. He let it grow stagnant. He sat on his ass and was really indolent and decadent, and due to, I think, fear, didn't allow anyone to innovate, didn't allow society's status quo to be changed in terms of economics, in terms of progression, in terms of all that, I think, due to fear. And the thing with Heimerdinger is I think he also wasn't able to see things from a human perspective due to his long lifespan, and I think due to not trying. Because I think he has the capacity to be able to see things from people's perspective. But when Victor comes to him, and Jace come to him with their mortality and saying, I can't wait 10 years to unleash these products to the public, yes, Heimerdinger's right. He ends up being correct about the fact that Hextech, unbridled, unfettered, you let it go uncontrolled, leads to incredible risk. We see that. He's right about that. However, he didn't meet them from a human perspective. He didn't treat the subject with enough humanity. He just said, yep, you do it in 10 years, polish it up. We can show it to them once we iron out the kinks. He didn't even give them any specifics for that. He didn't approach it from a human level and go, listen, I understand you guys really want to get it out there right now. I understand, Victor, that you're on a clock, but this is unsafe right now. Here are the reasons why. Let's work together, find a solution to this. Let's find a compromise, but let's be safe. He didn't do that. And I think if he had, things might have been different. But he had a blind spot. He, through years of indolence and years of not seeing things from a human perspective, was oblivious and short-sighted and lacked humanity and empathy. However, I think after meeting Ekko and seeing the way he gathers these people together and has this uprising and has such warmth and value and connections and togetherness and harmony between people, that changed Heimerdinger. And I think he started to really value everything about life. The thing with Heimerdinger that I will stick with from start to finish, and that I have stuck with, is that he does not have a bad heart. He has done bad things, a lot of it through his, like I said, indolence and lack of action, lack of agency. But he never had a bad heart. He never tried to do bad. He never had malice. But he was just short-sighted. He lacked perspective, and that doesn't mean that it wasn't very bad. It doesn't mean that he hasn't done bad things as a result of this. But what I mean to say is the nature of his character, if you're trying to analyze who he is, I really don't think he has any bad intent in his heart. I think he has a good heart. I think it was just clouded by fear and privilege. But Ekko clears the skies for him. He teaches him how to combat his fear. He shows him the human level and shows him the beauty of harmony between people of all walks of life. And so in this episode, Heimerdinger is enlightened, I think, and I think he values all of that, and I think he's reached a point in his life where he can appreciate where he is, and not need this sort of reductive status quo. But he spent years in this world without trying to push things, without trying to save the world that he left. And so Ekko gives him that extra push, that extra impetus for him to go, okay, you know what? Maybe we shouldn't just let things play out their course. Maybe let's try to have our cake and eat it too and save that world, because maybe we can. And so he agrees, and he's a good person, and that's why he agrees, and he's and in this other shard, for the sake, sacrificing himself for the sake of a world that he will not see the benefits of within it. He won't see the benefits of this world that he sacrifices himself to save, but he does it anyway. Very Final Fantasy XIV, if you know what I mean. He sacrifices himself for this, and it's due to Ekko, and I think he can go out smiling and proud of who he became, and the fact that his lasting impact and lasting legacy on the world is one that did not betray where his heart lied, where his heart was, who he was. He made mistakes, absolutely. He acknowledged those, and he abandoned people. As he quite literally says, he will not abandon Ekko this time, like he did before. I think he's talking about Victor, maybe about Jace, maybe about, in some ways, Singed. But this time, he is going to do the right thing, and he's going to be fearless and take that extra step, because sometimes, that for the sake of evolution, for the sake of progress, you need to keep progressing. You can't be reckless. This is the balancing act here, and the thematic thesis I think that's here. I think Arcane's saying, in order to make the world better, you need to take that extra jump. You need to, but you cannot lose that sense of reality in the world you live in. You can't be reckless. You can't have reckless abandon. You have to have a firm eye on what the world is, operate intelligently within it, and never let go of humanity, which is what Victor does. Keep your feet on the ground, understand the worlds around you, embrace all that humanity is, and never lose sight of humanity. But with all that in mind, intelligently take those jumps forward. Ekko is the greatest example of that. And I think Heimerdinger embodies that at the end as well, because he helps them to do this. This is something that I don't think he would have done earlier in the series, but he does it because of what he's learned, how he's been enlightened, and I think it's best exemplified through when they learn about the things to do with manipulating time. And Powder and Ekko are really excited, and Powder's wanting to push it and experiment very, very much, experiment a lot with it. And Heimerdinger kind of says, okay, but let's just be a bit careful. It's good that we made these strides. Let's be careful and experiment a little bit and then push it gradually. And that is the way to do it, right? I think he ends as a thesis, as an example of what this story is saying, which is don't be overly cautious such that it leads to stagnancy, but don't be reckless. Productive progress, intelligent progress, heartfelt progress. Be careful, but be bold and courageous at the same time. It's that middle ground and that compromise. And I think Heimerdinger beautifully displays that, and his last impact on the world just makes me really emotional, is ensuring that Ekko will be able to make that leap. I think he needed to connect that to ensure that Ekko, I don't understand all the physiology or the logic behind how he disappeared, how he died there, but the TLDR is that for Ekko to go back, to change things for their shard, for their world, Heimerdinger needed to die in that moment, and he was happy to do it, happy to sacrifice. And to me, I gotta say, start to finish, he's a magnificent character. A great secondary character with a defined role, dynamic and defined, and a very, he doesn't get tons of screen time, but his arc is so well prioritized. It has as much weight as it should. I don't think it's lacking in any way, and his dynamics with Jace, with Victor, with Singed, with Ekko, he's just a great character, and I think he sacrificed himself for something that in the end will be absolutely worth it. And he was enlightened at the end. He learned. Someone as old as him, you never stop learning. Now, there's then Powder. Now, I don't know whether to refer to her as Powder. I guess in that universe, she's Powder. But I call her Jinx because that's her main character name in Arcane at this point in her life. It doesn't really matter what we call her. She's both. She's both Powder and Jinx. All the ideas of Powder being dead, Jinx being a new person, they are nebulous and arbitrary, and they aren't true, because Jinx wouldn't exist as she is now without Powder being the person she was before. They're the same person. The gradient, the blurred line, the line is so blurred, it doesn't exist. basically. Jinx and Powder are the same person. Jinx exists because Powder was the way she was. Jinx didn't result from nothing, and I think that's been clear for a while now. I think Ekko was coping and denying that Jinx, saying that Jinx is a new person, that Powder was gone. I think he was trying to get Vi to do that as well when he told her that. And I think both of them told themselves that and tried to delude themselves into thinking that Powder was not in there, because the easiest thing to deal with in a situation where she is your enemy is to say, this is just my enemy. This isn't anyone I know. This isn't the girl I loved. She's dead. This is a new person, so I don't have to feel any complex moral feelings or complex emotions or grief about her being my enemy. It's just easier to think of her as Jinx. However, that isn't reality. Jinx is Powder. Powder is Jinx. This person has so many traits of the young girl who is Powder, and in the current girl who is Jinx, the current woman who is Jinx. In this alternate universe, there are lots of commonalities. And I think the main commonality is this connection with the people around her, and this desire to push herself for the sake of them. She has just always, from the word go, valued the people around her. In some ways, she poured herself too much into that, and that's why she snapped in a lot of ways, with Vi and with Silco, and just gave up on her life. But the commonality is that she's always cared for these people. Anyway, I talked about all this stuff before. Jinx and Powder are the same person. There is no divide. They are the same person at different stages of our lives. You know, I think there are certain situations in which someone could view themselves as being a new person. For example, I think I'm a heterosexual cis male, so I can't relate to this, but I've seen trans people talk about viewing the person they were as a different person, and I can totally conceptualize and understand that. Everyone's different, maybe you feel that way, and that's totally valid. So I'm not saying that this is a blanket statement about everyone, that we are never reborn as a totally new person. No, but in the case of Jinx and Powder, this is definitely a case where I think she's the same person. She's just gone through immense change, but there is still Powder in there. All this ramble to say that I'm so happy to see her happy and healthy and surrounded by people she loves and with a support system that has helped her move past and deal with Vi's death in a healthy way, and seeing her with Ekko, with this person who clearly so beautifully understands her, and vice versa, felt like, in a way, an element of this I've seen in Monogatari and Umineko, actually. The beauty of seeing a world in which someone who's gone through immense tragedy is happy, that there is a possibility out there. And that possibility, this also offers me hope that that possibility is not gone for Jinx. I think she can still get something, and just like Heimerdinger, maybe by the time her life's done, she can look back on it fondly and have happiness and hope, or at least be proud. And I think she's on the path to doing that. However, Isha's death is very difficult. She's going to have to deal with that in a really specific way. She's going to need support from the people around her. But nonetheless, it was just beautiful emotionally, and I think it was something I needed to see her like this. Yeah, I don't have a huge amount of analysis to dive into with regards to Powder. It's just, I think it was just a very emotional role she had here, and I loved it. Just seeing her generally enjoy life, and dancing and being happy and loving putting on a show, and making an entrance, and just being a regular girl. It really means a lot to me, and I really adore the scene where she's stepping out, I think, onto the dance floor or into the bar or whatever, and she's making an entrance, and the framing and the steps are pretty one-to-one with her entrance as Jinx into the series in Season 1, Episode 4, but the context completely different, much more happy, much more productive, and just all around feel good. Now, to transition over to talking about Ekko, I just want to talk about how he views and conceptualizes Powder, because I really, like I've alluded to, I really don't prescribe or agree with the idea that Jinx and Powder are separate people. No. They're the same person at different stages of their lives, having taken different names, but the essence of the person within is absolutely present in both. There's Jinx and Powder, there's Powder and Jinx, etc. And I think Ekko sort of realizes this throughout this episode, and I love the scene where he tells her about the dream he had, obviously alluding to his reality, and how you were different too. And instead of telling her, you were kinda responsible for lots of death and murder and tragedy and devastation, let's keep that bit out. Instead he says, you were a genius, you changed the world with your inventions. And that's true. He is disappointed and really traumatized and grieved by the things that Jinx did because of how awful it is and how the person he was friends with and I guess had a crush on turned into that, and someone who he really cared for turned into that. And she should be held accountable for that. That is stuff that she did, and you can't shy away from that. However, I think in this, he really views and clocks that a lot of that was her fault, but he also feels sympathy for her situation. I think through this, he realizes that she was dealt a devastating hand. In a world where she has a proper support structure that every girl growing up, every kid growing up should have, she turned out so totally different. And so I think he laments the tragedy of what Jinx became, and just views it as an unfortunate fact of life that Powder became that. But obviously he doesn't blame Powder in this universe for it. He doesn't tell her the stuff she's done. Who's to say in another alternate universe he wasn't this crazy anarchist who does stuff as bad or worse than what Jinx did. And I think he is able to see the nebulous, really volatile nature of fate and how just the tiniest changes can cause rippling effects and cause people to go into so many different directions. So everyone has their own circumstances in life, and judging them and condemning them completely without knowing where they've come from or without being empathetic in situations that call for it, I think that he's sort of enlightened about that. Now, I'm not saying that Jinx shouldn't be stopped in certain situations, or that because some people have a sympathetic past, that automatically means that you have to try to reach out for them. Sometimes people are past the point of no return, but I think Jinx has strayed back from that. A lot of characters in this series straddle the point of no return and then ultimately drift back to a point where they can be redeemed. Jace did it throughout all of Season 1. I think Caitlyn is in the process of that. Heimerdinger, I think, goes through it. Who knows with Victor? He could go past it, he could go back. We'll talk about Victor in a second. But yeah, and I think that's being tackled pretty consistently throughout the series. And then just their relationship is so beautifully, the facial expressions, the music, the way they interact with each other, the dance, oh my god, to die for. Ekko not kissing her because, wow, that's just unbelievably, the way their relationship is established in one episode. Ekko just not wanting to kiss her because for her, it would be just another kiss. Of course, special, but one of many. For him, this is the first time, and he asks for it to be the first time. And she obliges. And just this glimpse into this peering through the looking glass of this universe where he can take solace in the fact that he was this happy with her. And I just want to, like, the main takeaway for me is that in spite of all this relationship with Powder that is so beautiful, where she hasn't been changed into Jinx, where Zaun hasn't been razed to the ground, where things aren't horrible in the Undercity, where there is harmony, across all of the city, under the Undercity, Piltover, where Benzo's alive, where Milo and Clagger and Vander are alive, where Silco didn't go down that path, and everything's worked out. And yes, Vi's gone, and it's incredibly tragic and sad, but this universe is happy. This is something that he definitely has dreamt about. I don't think, I think it's interesting that he alludes to his original universe being a dream, because I think this is something he may have dreamt about himself in an idealized reality. And yet, his conviction, his determination and perseverance, and his sense of home and duty for that home, the temptation to stay here must have been so so immense. It's everything you could have dreamed of. It's beautiful. It's full of hope. So many loved ones are back. And again, I do want to emphasize that it's not all rosy because Vi being gone is huge. He loves Vi. But all the things you've dreamed about are here. And he gives a beautiful tribute for Vi, just as he did in the inverse in our universe. But the TLDR is that everything, his wildest dreams have come to fruition here, and the temptation must have been so strong for him to stay here and just ignore and shut his eyes to the horrors of where he came from. But he can't. He needs to save that place. He was even told by Heimerdinger, there's no way back, and he had to strain himself, just as Jace. You know, I think people could I could easily see the internet memeing about the fact that Jace was given this horrible, devastating, apocalyptic landscape, this hell, whereas Ekko is in this idealistic, beautiful place, and Jace got the short end of the stick, and I joked about that earlier. But I think what Jace goes through in totality is similar to what Ekko goes through emotionally, for having to make the steps to give this all up, considering the life he's led. That is painstaking, and he gives it up, and I can't admire him for his courage and commitment to saving that world enough. I can't commend him enough for that. That is why I think Ekko is a hero to me. And you know, I think of Ambessa. Recently in the series, she's told us some really great nuggets of wisdom, and she said to Caitlyn, you know, you need all these things to enact your vision upon the world and succeed, but you also need sacrifice. You need sacrifice. And that's what Ekko does here. Because Ambessa's right about that. Sometimes to see the world you want, the worlds you wish for reflected on the world in reality, you have to sacrifice things. And that is what Ekko does here. But the one thing that he does that Ambessa doesn't is he has hope for a better world. Ambessa says that her weakness is not being able to forgive, like Silco did for Vander and Vander did for Silco, and not being able to see hope in the world. Ekko does. And through seeing the capacity, the powder inside Jinx, and realizing that they're the same person, she's able to imbue that hope in him, and he's able to imbue that hope in Heimerdinger, and hopefully he'll be able to imbue that hope in the world as he's come back. And maybe in Jace, and maybe Jace can do it in the world as well, and maybe they can do it for Victor. But that's the point. What Ambessa lacks is hope. And that's what that is basically the one thing. It is hope and idealism. And, you know, Ekko has a vision. Ekko has a methodology. He is able to sacrifice things. He is smart. He has all those capabilities, but he also has hope. Ambessa has no hope, no idealism, no ability to forgive and fight for a better future in spite of the ugliness inside her. I also think back to this point about Ambessa and what it means to have hope and forgive, and basically how she has a lot of the things that Ekko has, but the one characteristic difference that makes her a true villain and makes Ekko a hero is that she is unable to see hope and unable to forgive. And I mean, that concept is really encapsulated in this episode, because we see the antagonist of Season 1, the closest thing to a quote-unquote villain of Season 1, though I wouldn't consider him a villain in that sense, I really wouldn't, but you know what I mean. Silco, who went down this path and that led ultimately to his death and the destruction and pain of so much and so many. And we have him in Season 1, and then we have him in this episode. Looks like a totally different man in a lot of ways. And what does he say? The greatest thing in life one can do is find the ability to forgive. Or I'm paraphrasing a little bit, but the main difference between that timeline and our timeline is that in this positive one, he was able to forgive Vander. That's the thing here. With this sort of cycle that this show is talking about, it's not fair. Sometimes those who want to stop the cycle, if they really want to do it, they have to do things that are unfair. You know, from Silco's point of view in Season 1, he must have thought to himself, why do I have to forgive these people? Why do I have to forgive Vander for wronging me so horribly? But with these sorts of stories, with these sorts of themes, a lot of times in order to break the cycle, or at least take steps towards doing so, one has to do something stupid or unbelievable or insane. And sometimes forgiveness is that insane. And that's something that Ambessa can't bring herself to do, so she is stuck in this cycle. But Ekko, in spite of his hatred, he sees that, as idealistic as he is, and honestly, even before this episode, I think he's one of the most morally good characters in the series, but he looks at the way he sort of gave up on Jinx, or tried to, for the sake of comfortability, convince himself that Jinx was not powder at all, and wanted to essentially, through brute force, pull everyone up from the roots with that hope. I think he is now shifting the complexion of that to, let's take everything back by force, to maybe this world is something we can salvage. Maybe there is hope for togetherness. Maybe this future can't be achieved in totality, but maybe we can strive towards this harmony. Maybe we can make steps to do it for future generations. Even if we can't achieve it now, maybe this future, this beautiful world that is possible, it was possible. Despite tragedy, despite societal hierarchies, it is possible, there is hope, and Ekko sees it here, and he strives for it. He had everything. He had a soulmate, he had a beautiful world to live in, and a place that Felicia, as she asked for in episode 5, a place for kids to grow up. He could have raised a family. He had his father figure. He had his friends, and he gave it all up because it wasn't his world, and because there was a world out there that needed saving. There was a Jinx out there who needs his help. There was a Powder out there who needs his help. And Jinx is ailing here. Jinx is ailing. She is going through it, I'm sure, and she could use his support. And I think he thinks of that and he realizes it, and he has to go back. He has to save it. God damn. Episode 7 of Season 1 and Season 2 really are the Ekko episodes. I love this character so much. And then also there's sort of an encapsulation of the idea of taking things too far, being reckless, sort of encapsulated in one scene. And that scene is when Ekko's trying to sort of gather the amount of seconds he can manipulate time to go back with. It's 4 seconds. He pushes it any further than that, Heimerdinger blows up like a tomato. That was crazy. And I knew, I've heard from League people throughout the years that Ekko's Z drive, whatever it is, his power is manipulating time, and we saw that in Season 1 to an extent. His fascination with time, or his reliance on time, and how he uses it and wields it, we saw that throughout Season 1. But I guess this is his final form of his power. He sort of invents it here. So that must be a nice little nod to League players. But yeah, 4 seconds, push it any more past that, and you get past the realms of boldness and courage into recklessness. And that's the fine line that we're trying to tread here as we try to save the world and fix things, or at least make steps toward fixing things. I don't imagine that the world will be saved and we'll get a universe like this, because honestly, the potency of this episode would be undercut if at the end of the next 2 episodes, we get a time skip to the future and the world is beautiful like this. I don't think it's that easy, but I think we'll end this series having seen steps of progress, hope, maybe a great amount of sacrifice, but hope and encouragement that maybe one day we can get there, even if we don't get here now. And I think Ekko and Jace are going to be a big part of that. And Heimerdinger, of course. His sacrifice let it happen. A great deal of Heimerdinger's life involved him not living in a way loyal to his heart. He was a very curious mind, with a very good heart, who wanted the world to prosper, but his fear led him into stagnancy and inaction that only exacerbated societal problems and pain. But his lasting impact on the world is making it so that maybe that can be redone, maybe that can be redeemed or saved. And I mentioned Jace, let's get to Jace. I kind of mentioned this during the reaction, but I absolutely adore how episodes 5 and 6 show us this shocking new Jace, but again, still Jace. I talked about in those episodes how the elements of Jace and the drastic actions he's taking still very much show that I don't think he's been tampered with by the Arcane in the way that Victor says he has been. He says that he's changed, that something's controlling him in a sense. He kind of alludes to that. No, he's not. He's just seen what the negative ramifications of the extremes of using Hextech are, and he knows that it must be stopped. This, again, the core of his identity must be stopped. And I mentioned this during the reaction, but how crazy is it that in episode 2 of season 1, he was going to end it all because he viewed a world without Hextech, and now we see him fighting for his life. He breaks his leg, he's in some doldrums, it's extremely hard to get food, he's in this apocalyptic landscape. He could have just gave up and died, but he fights tooth and nail to try to find some way back. And he does, and what that will lead to is him trying to enact a world without Hextech. Now, I don't know if necessarily we'll get a world without a Hextech. Maybe there'll again be some compromise. Maybe there'll be a middle ground again with not being reckless abandon, but also being progression. That'll be a bit of a common ground between Jace and Victor here. Maybe that's what'll happen. I'm not sure exactly. And maybe Jace will have to adjust the way he does it a little bit. But what I really take away from this is I love how that we see very effectively through this sort of montage that Jace painstakingly came to this conclusion through example, through seeing it for himself. And I don't think anything as impactful, it had to be this impactful for him to come to that decision. And the juxtaposing shots of Jace walking through this muck, this hellscape, and Ekko emotionally going through something very similar, even though the surroundings are very different. My God, that just spoke to me so much. And Jace is just this struggler, right? Who knows what would have happened if Jace wasn't able to somehow have enough hope and courage and boldness and a sense of what needs to happen in the world to save it. Who knows what would have happened if he didn't have the strength to get himself up. But he did. And speaking of the Hex Core, there is that scene near the end where Powder seems to retain the shards, the Hex Core. And that makes me really wonder, what I get from that is essentially that maybe her sort of natural curiosity would make it so that maybe this universe isn't one without Hextech. Maybe it is an inevitability, but maybe, I don't know that the show is saying that Hextech should not exist. I'm not sure, but I think there's a decent chance that the conclusion it has about Hextech is not that it shouldn't exist, but that it should exist for progression, for scientific innovation, but should just be very carefully monitored, like Heimerdinger would suggest. What I think of when I see that is, in this beautiful world, I would like to hope that Powder would try to pursue that, but in the way that she learned was most productive, through Ekko and through Heimerdinger, with caution. But anyway, back to this. So yeah, we have Jace, who goes through all of this, and just the way it viscerally nails home his conviction, I absolutely adored it, and it made me appreciate him so much. His evolution, or de-evolution, whatever you want to call it, and then ultimately meeting the hooded figure at the place where it all started, in the commune. Now, maybe I'm having a bit of a brain fart. I don't know exactly who the person was that was kind of kneeling with the staff. Maybe that was meant to be, I don't know, maybe that was meant to be Victor, maybe that was meant to be him. I don't really understand what that was trying to signify, but the TLDR is that is the place where it all started. In reflection, on rewatch, and upon editing, it's a day or two after I recorded this, and I just realized that I think it's just straight up Jace. I think he just straight up gets the hammer, like he abandons the hammer in that cavern, he goes on this trek, and he says this is where it all started, and he gets the hammer, the second hammer. I think that other corpse or body that he got it from, that the hooded figure, who I assume to be Victor, was standing by, that he kind of led him to, I think that was Jace. The hooded figure's, I guess, attachment to this area, combined with the sort of way that the clouds part, and it's so sunny and beautiful, and how that may reflect the psychological state of the hooded figure, and then how Jace goes back and it's sort of ground zero, and then he gets the hammer. I think it's just straight up Jace. There was so much going on during my initial watch that I didn't really get that, and I was confused, but I'm pretty sure that was Jace. Feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that was Jace. And he meets the hooded man who saved his mom and him, and who imbued in him the love for the arcane and magic in general. And he says, why did you give me this if it would lead to this? That is what makes me think that hextech and magic in general is not to be frowned upon inherently. It's about how it's used. And I think the intention here of the hooded figure is for Jace to go back because hextech has gone too far and kind of reset it or stop it from getting too far, because Victor has gone way too far and too deep. He's in too deep into it, maybe being controlled in some way by the arcane, being spoken and acted through, and that's too far. We're already on the path of no return. We need to stop it. We need to cut it out. And the hooded figure, the one who gave Jace, who saved him and his mom, is the one essentially non-verbally telling him to go back and change this. And Jace says, I won't fail. This hooded figure is Jace's sort of guiding light, in the same way that Sky kind of is for Victor in a dark sort of inverse. But this hooded figure is trying to save the world. And I think what's clear is that they can manipulate space and time. Jace sees them, and then they're gone after he blinks. He sees them several times throughout the episode, and they're present in a parallel world. They seem to have some control over space, and we also see time manipulation through what Ekko does, so I think they can manipulate space and time. What did I talk about at the end of episode 2? I've toyed with the idea of this hooded figure being Victor, and I'm getting even stronger vibes about it now. Again, I talked about how I thought the showrunners had eliminated that possibility and talked about how that isn't true, how that wouldn't happen. But maybe I'm misremembering? Maybe they went back on that? I don't know, because I'm getting a lot of signs that this is actually Victor. And how beautiful would that be that some form of Victor has realized that he himself went too far, told Jace to stop himself, maybe emboldened by the effect that Jace had on him, maybe emboldened by the things he learned about the beauty of the world and humanity that he lost sight of, that he missed the forest for the trees, and he trusts his partner more than anyone to put it right and stop himself, with a firm eye on the beauty of humanity, and that progression should be striven for, but not if you forego humanity, if you don't keep your feet on the ground and understand the world around you, as long as you don't fly too close to the sun. I feel like in some way, some manner, this is Victor, who has, I don't know, a Victor who has seen the mistakes that him in the present, in our story, has made and wants Jace to stop him. I don't know how there are two Victors potentially, I have no idea, but how beautiful is it that these two souls, I think they're soulmates, honestly. I think they could be my favorite relationship in the series, though Ekko and Powder / Jinx is now up there for me. But there's amazing dynamics. There's Vi Powder / Vi Jinx. There's Vander Silco. There's Silco Jinx. I think Silco Jinx is really, really right up there. But my favorite in the whole series might be Jace and Victor, because if this theory is right, and if Victor was the one who imbued the beauty of magic in Jace all that time ago to get him to believe in hextech and imbue within him hope and idealism, and what's beautiful about Jace's fixation on magic is not the magic itself, but the wonder it imbues in him, the desire to change the world for the better. And that aspect of Jace is what's needed. That's what's needed to change this world, not necessarily hextech. He's able to give that up, but what stays within him is the desire to see the world bettered. And to better the world, he needs to stop this reckless progression, take things back. Maybe hextech can still be involved, but from a much different angle. But what's beautiful about this is that I think Victor learned a lot of things through being with Jace, through years spent with him. I think he learned the beauty of what this means. And I think he was someone who, within him, had the same ambitions to benefit the world. and him and Jace shared that beauty. And so he takes that shared kinship and then goes back and puts it in Jace in the first place, but it also came from Jace, so he had that capacity in him all the time. It's that sort of grandfather paradox thing, but it just lends this emotionality and scope, and it just makes him and Victor feel like fated partners. I don't even know if I would put a descriptor on it. I don't know if I'd say it's romantic. I don't know if I'd say it's platonic, if they're brothers, if they're best friends, if they're just fated enemies who share a kinship. But their relationship defies description, and every element, everything is in there. Agreements, disagreements, kinship, anger, resentment, jealousy, but also love, brotherhood, a shared dream. And I think that if this is true and Victor is this wizard or this warlock or whatever, and I talked about the aesthetic parallels, the staff, the hood. Also, I didn't even talk about Jace in episode 2 puts this like robe or this cloak around Victor in episode 2, and I think he keeps it the whole time. So as much as his humanity is stifled and he is so robotic, Victor, he still holds on to Jace in a sense. Like, their relationship is so special. And I don't know, again, I don't know if this is real, if this is what's happened, but if Victor has gone back around to imbue the love for magic in Jace, and he has had the faith in him to change things and stop himself, oh my god, that could be unbelievable. If it doesn't happen, that's fine. I'm just saying if the possibility exists that it does, and I think I think with every passing episode, I think it could happen, and that is just beautiful to me. It is just exquisitely beautiful, and it makes me think that maybe Victor can in some way be saved before the end. I thought he might have been past the point of no return, but if some element of him is trying to get Jace to stop him, maybe he'll be able to see where he was misled. I don't know, man. This episode was just unbelievable, and what I am getting is there's a lot of compromise thematically here. There is advocation of revolution and making that push forward, but there's also advocation of caution, and definitely thematic notes of middle ground and compromise, of progression, but not reckless progression, and like I said, keeping a firm eye on humanity and being smart about this and being in reality and not being too crazy in progressing things and trying to change the world. This sort of middle ground, be like this sort of cautious revolution. Cautious is the wrong word. Maybe this sort of deliberate revolution. And I can understand how some might, especially in the current political landscape around the world, not be down with that, not vibe with that, because some might view that as fence sitting. But I think the nuances there are much more thoughtful than that, personally. And there are 2 episodes to go. Maybe my mind will change on this, but as far as I'm concerned, it's a very thoughtful, idealistic, and yet realistic way to view these sorts of issues. And personally, I've never been one to really care too much if a story, about whether or not I agree politically with a story or not, as long as it's executed well. And to me, this episode was beautiful. The more I talk about it, the more I think about it, the music, the visuals, they are embedded, carved into my mind. I will not be able to stop talking about or thinking about this episode forever. And I gotta be silent on Discord, on social media, until this episode comes out. It's gonna be a few weeks before I can talk about this with people. I'm gonna go insane. But this means so much to me. This means so much to me, this episode. It was a true artistic achievement. But let me just talk about one thing, because now we have 2 episodes left, and we spent an episode to explain a lot of things, but there are so many things that need to be tied up. And having spent 1/3 of the time of Act 3 or Act 6 here, I'm starting to realize that things will not be all tied up in a little bow, probably. I just think there's too much to do. I think there's too much to do that. I think there's a very good chance that there will be some threads that won't be tackled with maybe the way I want them. Maybe there are some things that'll be rushed. Maybe there are some things that'll be imperfect, because season 2 up till this point has been rough around the edges in places, a little bit imperfect. And I talked about that in episode 6, and I kind of love that about it. Whereas season 1 is so on point and refined and buttoned up, and every character arc is so filled with richness. There are some characters that are more uneven here. There are some things that are not done as well. Like, I'm still waiting for the payoff for Caitlyn's thing, and I want a bit more from that. Savika has been gone for 3 episodes where I hoped she'd have more. How exactly will things end with Vi and Caitlyn? What's going on with the way they'll end Vander? And Mel has this whole plot line going on that's really kind of separate from everything at the moment. How will Ambessa end? What will Jinx do? And then how will Ekko and Jace factor into all this? There's a chance it could be bloated and rushed to an extent for the last 2 episodes. I hope not. I have faith in these writers, especially after they come out with something like this. But I think I'm coming to the conclusion that it won't be all buttoned up and perfect like season 1 was. And I'm okay with that, because if I have to get a bit of an imperfect end to the series for this episode to exist as it does, I will take that. This is an episode, this is a piece of media I will never forget. I'll carry this with me for the rest of my life. The beauty of it, the music, the visuals, the emotional notes, the sequences. I will rewatch this ad nauseum for the foreseeable future. This is my favorite episode of Arcane. This is one of my favorite episodes of anything ever. This has embedded itself within me and will continue to. And you know, if that means that the rest will be a little rushed, maybe some plot threads will be a little messy, I'll deal with that. That's fine with me. If it's meant that this can exist. This feels like a miracle of an episode to me. Now, of course, that doesn't mean I'm not going to critique things. If there are things later on that I think are a problem, of course, I'm going to do that. But if I'm looking at 2 universes, one where all the rest of the episodes of Act 3 are really good, but none reach this level, and one where I have this episode and it's a little messy but still good towards the end, I'll take this one. Don't know if you guys would agree with that or not. That's how I feel right now. I guess there's a chance that could change as I watch the rest of the episodes, the next 2 episodes, but that's how I feel now, and I don't see that changing, really. Guys, this was just... I will never forget this, and you guys literally watched me having my life change through this episode. Like, this is something that struck me so deeply that I will never forget, that I appreciate so much that it exists, and yeah, I can't gush enough about it. This was perfection. Please, share any details that I haven't mentioned. I'm sure I missed tons. I hope that this discussion wasn't too all over the place, but I really just wanted to get everything out there. I might add some stuff in post, but I just really hope my passion for it has come across. I hope I expressed that adequately. I hope you enjoyed the reaction, and again, I feel really bad that I have to cut this episode up, but it's what had to happen. Thank you so much. If you'd like early access to the next episode, which I can't wait for, you can do so on Patreon, early access. Yeah, I'm going to be thinking about this one for a long time. I'm going to need to take a little break before I watch the next one. Thank you guys so much for watching. We'll see you in the next one.